And I will also stop Joe Biden's crusade to crush crypto. We're going to stop it. I will ensure that the future of crypto and the future of Bitcoin will be made in the USA, not driven overseas. I will support the right to self-custody to the nation's 50 million crypto holders. I say this with your vote. I will keep Elizabeth Warren and her goons away from your Bitcoin. And I will never allow the creation of a central bank digital currency.
Never forget, America is the strongest when we lead not only by our example of our power, but by the power of our example. You can clap for that.
This is my video update on this Sunday morning, May the 26th. Let's talk about some news. And how about Joe Biden speaking at West Point, saying that he was going to be the quarterback at the Naval Academy, but the Naval Academy ended up going with Roger Staubach. I believe Roger Staubach played college football at the Naval Academy. The great Roger Staubach, the great Dallas Cowboys quarterback. Anyway, Biden was going to play at the Naval Academy, and he decided to go to Delaware instead. This is a story that he likes to tell often. Of course, Biden, once again, obsessed with Putin, talking about the tyrant that is Putin. Biden's obsession with Putin is very bizarre, very unhealthy, and very bizarre. Why are you so jealous of Putin, Biden? Why are you so jealous of the Russian president? Makes me wonder. What else? Biden was telling the crowd when to applaud. That was interesting. Anyway, that was Biden at West Point. And let's now talk about Trump. Trump at the Libertarian Conference, I believe it was in New York, I want to say. But yeah, Trump decided to speak at the Libertarian Conference. Not a friendly venue for Trump, but good on him for going there to speak to them. And it was hot and cold. There were people cheering for Trump. There were people booing for Trump. But I think Trump said some interesting things, some good things. He talked about protecting Bitcoin, keeping Warren away from your Bitcoin. I think that's good. He talked about digital currencies, CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. He talked about how he does not support digital currencies, central bank digital currencies, which is very good. I think that's a very good statement for Trump to make, not supporting central bank digital currencies. What else did Trump say? He said he's going to end the conflict in Ukraine. He said he's going to stop the killing that is taking place in Ukraine, the money that the U.S. is spending in Ukraine, that's going to end. And that money is going to be brought back to the United States. So that was Trump. That was Trump at the Libertarian Conference. On balance, I think he gave a good speech. And yes, he was jeered and booed. He was also cheered. He was jeered and cheered. But good on him for speaking to what I would consider I don't want to say a hostile crowd, but definitely not a pro-Trump audience. Trump has to stay away from the neocons, man. I don't think he can, but that's what he has to do. He has to stay away from the neocons. I love this sculpture. You know why I love this sculpture? Because it's the whole family, and they're holding up the globe. And I love how the dog is in on the action. I think that's so cool. Yes. You want me to take a photo? Okay. One sec. All right. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Whoop. One more.
Okay.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you.
Very cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did it turn out all right? All right. So yeah, what I like about this sculpture here is that the dog is getting in on the action with the family. You know, jumping up on the dad's legs, saying, "Yeah, I wanna hold the world up as well," which is so accurate when you think about it. The dog is always part of the family, right? The dog is part of the family, and whatever the family does, the dog wants to be part of it. That's why I like that sculpture. Great sculpture here in Ayia Napa. All right, so what should we discuss now? Let's see here. I talked about Biden at West Point. Wow, can you imagine? Biden might have been the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys if it wasn't for Roger Staubach. Oh, boy. Yeah. Let's talk about the UK. Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak wants to bring back national service, wants to send 18-year-olds to the military under the scheme, which is expected to cost around 2.5 billion pounds a year. All 18-year-olds would be required to either join the military full-time or volunteer 1 weekend a month or 25 days a year with community organizations such as police or National Health Service. Here's what Sunak said. As a father, I look forward to my own 2 daughters doing their national service. I think they will find it rewarding. They will find it a rewarding experience. So let me know in the comments down below. Do you think that Sunak would allow his family members to do national service, to go into the military? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe yes. Maybe no. But that's what Sunak said. Bring back the national service. I don't think that's going to get him a lot of votes on the July 4th election. I'm telling you, I don't think that's going to be very popular with the teenagers, the 18-year-olds, but who knows? Al Greek. Maybe Alex Greek? The horse head. The horse head. All right, let's walk. Which way should we walk? Let's see here. So there was a study. Let's sit down real quick and talk about this study, and then we'll do some more walking. We'll walk up that way. So there was a study that, or we'll walk down that way, actually. So there was a study, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, which talked about the UK economy and the tough fiscal choices ahead, which would explain why Sunak called an election. The UK is going to face some tough years ahead. He doesn't want to be prime minister during those tough years. This would be my guess. And there was also a parliament member who gave an interview. I forgot on what show, and I forgot the parliament member's name. But he actually said, this was before Sunak called the elections. He said that Sunak, it's the yellow submarine, guys. The yellow submarine. The yellow submarine. We all live in the yellow submarine. The yellow submarine. The yellow submarine. So Sunak, yeah, the parliament member said that Sunak called or was going to call elections. This is before he called elections. Was going to call elections because the UK is in a war with Russia. And Sunak doesn't want to be a wartime prime minister because it's a losing war with Russia. And he made this statement a couple of days before Sunak actually called the elections. Anyway, let's get back to this study from the IFS, which is saying that the UK economy is in a world of hurt. Tough choices ahead for the next prime minister. According to the study, the UK economy is going to have to deal with a debt burden close to 100% of GDP, high interest rate, and low growth, a trifecta of problems. And the study says that the next prime minister is going to have to either increase taxes, which is not going to be popular, print more money, which is not going to help with interest rates, or cut spending, which is something no government wants to do. Rishi Sunak is going to be spending money on military service, so cut spending, don't see it happening. But according to the IFS study, that's the choice that the next prime minister faces in order to get the economy back on track. Tax, print, or cut spending. I know something that the UK could do. It's just a thought, but maybe the UK can stop sending hundreds of millions and billions to the Elensky regime. maybe just a thought. Just a thought there. What do I know, though? What do I know? Anyway, that's the study from the IFS. And let's now talk about Ukraine. And we are getting reports that the recruiting of prisoners, of convicts in Ukraine is ready to go. The Justice Minister gave an interview to the New York Times, and the Justice Minister said that 350 inmates have already been freed. That's the Black Pearl, that ship right there, the famous ship, the Black Pearl in Napa. It's a booze cruise, I think. I think that's, you get on that ship and you party it up. I don't know. Oh, there's the yellow submarine. Right there, you can get a good look at the yellow submarine. All right, so 350 inmates are already freed and ready to go, and another 4,000 are on their way. And the plan is that, or at least the law that Elensky signed, is that the inmates that go and fight, they are eligible for parole. And I remember when the Collective West media was running stories about Wagner using convicts. Remember that? Wagner, convicts, prisoners are fighting in Ukraine. Remember those stories? And now we have the Justice Minister talking to the New York Times about a plan and a law that Elensky signed, which will send prisoners to the front lines for their freedom. Look at that lizard. Oh man. It's so hard to get them on video, those lizards. Anyway, let's let's continue here. So there were Ukraine military-aged men that made it to Hungary, and a Hungarian publication interviewed them, and they said that the average, the average lifespan of these men that get sent to the front line, that get pulled up off the street, thrown in a van, and get sent to the front line is 3 hours. 3 hours. And so these military-aged men that made it to Hungary, they're happy that they made it to Hungary, but they're still laying low because they fear that Elensky can still get them. I don't know, can you guys see the jet ski? So the Justice Minister told the New York Times, the deficit of soldiers, of course, the difficulties with the draft of ordinary citizens, those were the main reasons for the law, for the convict prisoner in the military law. An admission that Ukraine is running out of soldiers and that things are very difficult on the front lines, from the Justice Minister. So Ukrainska Pravda, they ran an article with the title, Western intelligence agencies suggest Ukraine will face large territorial losses this year. They sourced this reporting from the German publication Welt. And the article says that the overall picture for Ukraine at the moment looks bleak due to Russia's superiority, and that as the year progresses, Ukraine will lose a lot of territory, large territorial losses, according to Ukrainsky Pravda. And Ukrainsky Pravda is a pro-Ukrainian media outlet. It's Ukraine propaganda. And this is the second or third story that they've run in like the past 2 weeks, which has, I would say, has been anti-Elensky regime, or it's exposed the fact that the Elensky regime is losing the conflict. And it's also exposed the fact that the Elensky regime is corrupt. It was Ukrainsky Pravda that broke the story about the fortifications in Kharkov being stolen by fake companies. That was Ukrainsky Pravda that broke that story. And here they are again, talking about how Ukraine is going to suffer large territorial losses. Why would one of the top pro-Ukraine propaganda media outlets be reporting this stuff? So I imagine that most media outlets in Ukraine, if not all the media outlets in Ukraine, all the media outlets in Ukraine are funded by the collective West, by the U.S. government. That's where the money originates from. And it wouldn't surprise me if there are some forces in the Pentagon or in the U.S. establishment that want to see Elensky go. And so they're telling Ukrainsky Pravda, start reporting on news that is bad for Elensky, that doesn't paint Elensky in the Churchillian light, right? Something's going on here because Ukrainsky Pravda, they're reporting a lot about how Elensky is doing a terrible job. Someone in the U.S., maybe even the neocons, maybe a faction of the neocons, because there's a faction of the neocons that does not want Elensky in power anymore. Of course, there's a faction of the neocons that does want Elensky in power. But the State Department, they support Elensky. The Europeans, they support Elensky. But I think the Pentagon is not so hot on Elensky anymore. Anyway, I just find it interesting that Ukrainsky Pravda is reporting this. So yesterday we had, was it yesterday or 2 days ago? On the 23rd and 24th, we had a Ukraine drone strike a Russian nuclear early warning system located in the Krasnodar region in an area known as Armavir, close to Voronezh. And so this drone hit this nuclear early detection warning system, and a lot of people are talking about this. From what I understand, the damage was done, but I've read reports which say that the Russians can repair things within a month or two. So while the system was damaged, it wasn't destroyed, and it looks like Russia can repair this nuclear detection system. But a huge escalation, it seems. Now, did the U.S. help Ukraine to destroy this detection system? I don't know. They must have known about this, or they must have had some sort of idea what Ukraine was thinking of doing. If they actually helped Ukraine in destroying this system, then that's bad news. That is very bad news. Because this is a system that detects nuclear weapons, and you're destroying Russia's nuclear deterrent, part of Russia's nuclear defense strategy. That's alarming. That is very, very alarming. An incident like this means that Russia has to respond in one way or another, going after their nuclear deterrent umbrella. Even though it's just one radar system, very stupid, very reckless, very dangerous. And Russia's going to have to retaliate. Now, I don't know if they're going to retaliate against Ukraine, or if they retaliate in one form or another against the United States. But this is a big escalation if everything is as it is being reported, because the Russian Ministry of Defense has not commented on this. Not that I would expect them to comment on this. Oh boy, some real crazy people pushing us towards a nuclear accident, because taking out a detection system like this can lead to an accident happening. So Russia today did launch some... something fell on my head. Anyway, so Russia today did launch huge missile strikes in various regions in Ukraine. In the west of Ukraine, I believe they hit an airfield. They destroyed an airfield where the F-16s were going to be stationed. And the Russians got wind of it, and they demolished this airfield. Ukraine, yesterday, they launched an attack in the Belgorod region, in Belgorod city, and in some towns and villages in and around Belgorod. 4 people were killed. And yesterday, Russia launched, I believe it was a missile strike on a hypermarket, like a Home Depot type of shop in Kharkiv, where Russia claims that Ukraine was storing ammunition and weapons, something that they have done in the past. And Ukraine is saying that this was a civilian target. I don't know. I don't know what the truth is here, but when you look at the videos of this hypermarket, there is a lot of smoke coming out of this hypermarket, which means, I don't know, in my unprofessional eyes, something was in that hypermarket that caused this huge explosion and fire. And we're talking secondary explosions. Now, Ukraine media is saying, yes, there were secondary explosions once the missile hit, because this is a Home Depot type of store, and there's going to be stuff that can catch fire and can explode. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case, maybe. But a lot of smoke, a big fire in this hypermarket. So a lot of escalation. A lot of escalation. And a lot more escalation to come, because Blinken said yesterday that the U.S. is going to be sending another $275 million in weapons. And most of those weapons are going to be ATACMS. That is what the U.S. is going to send to Ukraine, a lot of ATACMS. And we know that the ATACMS are going to be used to try and hit Russian territory. A lot more escalation is on its way. And you know what Russia can do? A lot of people are discussing how will Russia retaliate if an ATACMS gets through their air defense and hits a target deep inside of Russia. What will Russia do to retaliate? Could do a lot of things, but I think the first possible target in a Russian retaliation will be the electric grid in Ukraine, which is a couple of strikes away from complete and total collapse. So I don't think the Elensky regime has really thought this escalation through, or at least the Biden White House has not thought this escalation through. Reuters reported the other day that Ukraine is in talks with the EU to maximize electricity imports. Last year, Ursula was bragging about how Ukraine is exporting electricity to the European Union, and this was a huge win for the EU. Cheap electricity to Ukraine. Now, Ukraine is begging the European Union to import electricity into Ukraine because their grid is on the verge of collapse. The Russians have brought the electricity grid in Ukraine right on the edge of collapse. One little flick, and the whole thing crumbles. So I don't understand why Elensky and why the U.S. and why the collective West is pushing Ukraine to escalate when Russia can knock out the entire electric grid in a couple of days. That doesn't make any sense, but I don't know. Anyway, let's move on now. How are we doing on time here? Yeah, we're doing all right. Look at all the waves. For Cyprus, these are big waves. I know for Australia or Hawaii, this is nothing. In Hawaii, this is nothing. In Australia, this is nothing. But in Cyprus, these are big waves. And I'm going to come back to the wave situation in Cyprus because it's relevant with a big news story. Very relevant. But for now, let's talk about Pirate Schultz. Pirate Schultz, captain of the Black Pearl. Pirate Schultz. That's his ship, everybody. That's where you could find Pirate Schultz. Hey, matey, that's my ship, Pirate Schultz. Walk the plank, Putin. Oh, boy. So he was doing a Q&A session in Berlin, and he was asked a question by a young Ukrainian refugee about the Taurus missiles. How come you're not sending Taurus missiles to Ukraine? And Schultz said that every single decision must be thoroughly weighed up, adding that it is his responsibility to prevent a scenario where it comes to an escalation of the war to a war between Russia and NATO. As for Taurus missiles specifically, it would only be tenable to deliver the weapon if we determine and define the targets ourselves, and that is, again, not possible if you don't want to be part of this conflict, he explained. Basically, Schultz is explaining to this refugee that asked him this question that Germany would have to send soldiers, operators into Ukraine in order to do the targeting and the firing of the Taurus missiles. And that would mean that Germany is directly involved in the conflict and directly attacking Russia with their Taurus missiles. And Schultz, here's my opinion on the Taurus. Schultz is sticking firm. He's staying firm. No Taurus missiles, even though he's getting a ton of pressure. No Taurus missiles to Ukraine. And the reason he is sticking to his position, in my opinion, is because of that leaked phone call of the German commanders, where they talked about using Taurus missiles to take out the Kerch Bridge. Remember that phone call? If that phone call didn't leak, Schultz would have sent the Taurus missiles. But because that phone call leaked, Schultz is saying, nope, can't do it now. Can't do it. That's why he's not sending the Taurus missiles, because of that phone audio leak. That audio leak that really, really screwed up Germany's plans to send Taurus missiles to Ukraine. Because Schultz has to admit now, what the audio conversation revealed was that the Taurus missiles, they cannot be operated by anyone other than German military. That's what those that's what that audio conversation revealed. If that thing wasn't leaked, then Schultz would have sent the Taurus missiles to Ukraine, and we would have gotten the usual BS line about, this is Ukraine's military that's operating the Taurus missiles, not German. Not German. Once we give the Taurus missiles to Ukraine, they become Ukrainian Taurus missiles. Like what Annalena said with the Leopard tanks. These aren't German Leopard tanks. These are Ukrainian Leopard tanks. That's what Schultz would have said. These aren't German Tauruses anymore. These are Ukraine Taurus missiles, and it's Ukraine's military, or mercenaries that are operating the Taurus missiles. That audio conversation really screwed up the collective West's plan with Taurus missiles. Anyway, let's move on now. Let's move on and let's do a quick update on the seizing of Russian assets. Seize, not freeze. Steal, not freeze. The G7 finance ministers, they met in Italy, and they could not finalize a plan to seize the Russian assets. They couldn't figure out a way to do it. They do have a plan. I talked about this plan a couple of days ago, maybe like a week ago, when I was in Nicosia, about how the collective West, the G7, what they are thinking of doing is taking the profits from the 300 billion, the interest from the 300 billion in Euroclear, and then giving Ukraine a $50 billion loan, and over 10, 20 years, the profits of the 300 billion would be used to pay back that loan. That's the plan that they're thinking of going with, but they still quite can't find the legal loophole to justify the seizing of the interest on the frozen assets. Did I say that right? Yeah, I think I said that right. Anyway, you guys know what I mean. According to reports citing the summit's attendees, one of the most widely discussed options is using future profits from the frozen funds as collateral for a multi-billion-dollar loan to Kiev. Yeah, exactly. And once Ukraine burns through the 50 billion loan, which is what they want to get, I think it was 30 billion or 50 billion, maybe 30 billion. And over 10 years, it would be 3 billion in profits, interest that's generated from the 300 billion. So over 10 years, the loan would be paid off. But we know that's a bunch of bollocks, right? Ukraine would burn through that 30 billion in 6 months. Half of it would go missing, another 10% for the big guy. And then they would ask for another 30 billion. And the collective West would give another 30 billion and another 30 billion. You know what they would say? After like a couple of years, the collective West is going to say, don't worry about it. The 300 billion in frozen assets, that's the collateral. That's the real collateral, not the 3 billion in interest that's being earned on the 300 billion. The way we're going to pay back the loan is going to be with the 300 billion. That's what they'll end up doing. Anyway, the G7 finance ministers said that when the G7 leaders meet in June, they'll figure out a way to steal the 300 billion, which will mean an end to the collective West financial system. It will be the beginning of the end. an acceleration of the end of the financial system of the collective West. It will also mean that that the war is pretty much winding down, coming to an end, because that's going to be the last big theft. That's the big one. So when they get the 300 billion, when they find the scheme to steal the 300 billion, that's when you know that they're all jumping ship. We got the big payday, the lump sum big payday, and now we're out. So let's, before we get to clown world territory, let's talk about the Gaza pier that detached and drifted onto a beach, an Israeli beach. According to Zero Hedge, Biden's $320 million Gaza pier has detached and drifted onto Israeli beach. A section of the $320 million floating pier, $1 million floating pier, built and erected off Gaza's coast, has broken off and floated onto an Israeli beach. The Saturday mishap is the latest setback for the U.S. humanitarian aid project after 3 U.S. troops were reported injured aboard the pier 2 days prior, including one critically. The Times of Israel's military correspondent, Emmanuel Fabian, has reported that an American vessel used to unload humanitarian aid from ships into the Gaza ship via a floating pier disconnected from a small boat tugging it this morning due to stormy seas, leading it to get stuck on the coast of Ashdod, eyewitnesses say. So because of stormy seas, this whole accident mishap occurred, and the part of the pier was broken off and ended up on the beach. So a couple of days ago, when I arrived in Ayia Napa, I mentioned the wind. You guys saw the wind and the waves, and I said that the waves for Cyprus is a lot. This is choppy. This is significant. Usually we have very calm waters, and you know that Israel is just that way. 15-20 minute flight. You go up and then you come down. That's how close we are to Israel. So we share the same waters. Stormy seas, you see? If you watch my videos, you would have seen this coming, because I showed the water and the waves. Anyway, because of the wind, sometimes I yell, and because of the wind, and I'm talking a lot louder, and I think sometimes it messes up the audio. So I'm trying to not talk louder, because the instinct is, as you have a lot of wind, the instinct is to talk louder. So maybe I forgot back there, maybe I raised my voice a bit, but I just remembered. The microphone is working super well. Removing the wind, there's no reason to raise my voice. Anyway, it's instinct to raise your voice with the wind. Let's do some clown worlds. Maybe this is Olaf Pirate Schultz's ship. Maybe this is his ship. It's nice. It's nice. Yeah. All right, let's do a couple of clown worlds. By the way, Yanukovych was in Belarus the other day with Putin. When Putin said that Elensky is illegitimate, Yanukovych was there. The last democratically elected president of Ukraine. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Something is afoot. Something is going on. So Elensky gave an interview yesterday, and he said that China must protect Ukraine in reference to the Budapest Memorandum. I always get the memorandums confused. Bucharest and the Budapest Memorandum. I believe it was the Budapest Memorandum, which said that Ukraine was not going to have nuclear weapons, and whatever nuclear arsenal was in Ukraine that's during the Soviet Union times, that will go to the successor state, which is Russia. And Delinsky said that China was there at that meeting, or he implied that China was at that meeting, and thus China has an obligation to protect Ukraine, which just shows how wrong Elensky is. Shows how wrong Elensky is. He is not being advised properly because China was not there. I don't believe China was a party to that signing. And China is not obligated to protect Ukraine. Whoa. Look at that guy. He fears nothing. Fearless lizard. Let's see. I want to get up here this way. Anyway, Elensky said during this meeting that during this interview, what am I saying? I lost my train of thought. Elensky said during this interview that the victim, during a conflict, it is the victim that decides peace. The victim decides peace, according to Elensky. Not the victor, the victim. I don't know. Why not? Why not? I always thought it was the victor that decides the peace agreement. What did I say? Peace? The peace agreement. I always thought it was the victor that decides the terms of the peace agreement, not the victim. Whatever Elensky is smoking, it must be good. It must be real good. Anyway, that's the clown world. God, I lost my train of thought walking this way. I don't know. I was in a groove and then I lost my groove. Anyway, all right. How about this cover from The Spectator? Macron's empire is falling apart. And look at how they depict Macron. What is The Spectator trying to say? I don't know. What are they trying to say about Macron? Not very flattering. All right, everybody, that's the video. That is the video, theduran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, Twitter, X, and go to the Duran shop. Use the code GetReady15 to get 15% off all merch. And go to Reverse Gear shop. Pick up some Reverse Gear merch. Take care.